Preparing an agarose gel, Dory is working with materials that are not considered hazardous. But the microwave door was blown off its hinges and hurtled all the way across the room. Even when you make sure to loosen the cap on a bottle going into the microwave, the expansion of gases during heating can force the cap to set up tight. Better to plug the container loosely with Kim wipes. And how hazardous is ethidium bromide? Even though we know it's highly mutagenic, the hazards to humans are not well understood and not likely to be, so it's prudent to avoid exposure, which brings us to the question: which of these common ways of using ethidium bromide offer a significant exposure hazard? Handling the powder form in preparing a stock solution, and the high concentration in cesium chloride gradients make these two the highest risk. When your protocol specifies acrylamide for a gel, there are ways to reduce the hazards. Incidentally, what are the hazards with acrylamide? That's the next challenge question. Which of the following are hazards of acrylamide? If you said all those listed, you're right. In particular, as with any hazardous powder, measuring and mixing are the high-risk procedures. You use a spatula, don't you? Never shaking out the amount you need, which spreads powder around heedlessly, needlessly. And you work with acrylamide only in a hood, don't you? Because with any fine powder, even working carefully, some of it goes where you didn't intend. While the larger particles land nearby, the fine ones disperse throughout the area and stay suspended for an extended period as an aerosol. Wouldn't it be better to purchase acrylamide in solution or in pre-weighed quantities? Go the full route. Many of the chemicals used in the molecular biology lab can be obtained in a form that reduces the hazard. Even if it means changing a protocol, weigh the nuisance against the gain in your safety. Incidentally, that face mask you wear when working with substances like powdered acrylamide, it doesn't so much protect you from inhaling aerosols as keep you from rubbing that itchy nose with your contaminated gloves. Don't let a mask lull you into overconfidence. And speaking of face protection, what's a good rule of thumb for using glasses, goggles, face shield? Reach for glasses when there's a splash hazard with a small quantity of a hazardous chemical. Every year, people get splashed in the eye while just opening or closing a bottle or popping open a microfuge tube. Glasses don't do much good if they're in your pocket. Goggles are in order when handling a liquid that's highly caustic or in larger volume, say a liter or more. Choose a face shield when handling very large volumes of a hazardous chemical or when there's a need to protect your face as well as your eyes. By the way, that includes any time you're removing a closed container from liquid nitrogen. And when working at a transilluminator, you always want the protection of a UV face shield. As Greg prepares for DNA sequencing, he's now ready for his radioisotope. Time for another challenge question. This one is about 3 common isotopes used in our labs. Match the isotope with its chief hazards. The eye and skin hazard is P32. Its beta particles can travel up to 20 feet in air. Inhalation and skin, iodine 125. It's the free form that presents the principal inhalation hazard. The beta particles of S35 can travel only about 1 foot in air, so the principal danger lies in hand-to-mouth contact leading to internal exposure. Some of the things we use every day, we tend to take for granted. If the centrifuge police raided your lab, what would they discover? Let's look into a few labs at random. And that's just the radioactivity. The levels of biological and other contaminants not so easily detected could be even worse. Bottom line, even though a centrifuge used for isotope work may have some level of non-removable radioactivity, it's imperative to remove surface contamination to avoid spreading it around. We never forget, but sometimes overlook, how a tiny bit of hazardous material can contaminate an entire work area.
$100 deposit for the Achieve sedan, MSRP $14,000.
System is working its way slowly towards us here on Long Island. Skies will become cloudy during the evening. Some scattered showers developing too, but they'll end overnight. Lows near 45. For Friday, partly to mostly sunny weather developing. High 60 to 65. It's going to be variably cloudy Friday.
Looks like an exaggeration. Truth is, it really happens.
It is almost an invariable correlation that the type of person who distributes radioactivity on the floor without telling anyone is almost invariably the same person who'll use the last bit of a reagent from a tube without telling anyone that it needs to be ordered again. That's a harmless activity, but it displays a lack of consideration for other people in the lab. And I think good lab practice, consideration for other people, and safety are 3 totally related issues.
When it comes time for Anne to do an electrophoresis, she knows the type of device used for sequencing operates at a dangerously high voltage. But how about the low voltage devices used with agarose gels? At 100 volts, what current level is sufficient to deliver a lethal shock? The answer is not very much. Even 25 milliamps can be life-threatening. So how do you keep your life from being threatened? A few tips. Be sure the power is off before you start making connections. Handle power leads one at a time, with one hand only, and never if your hands are wet or sweaty. Beware of loose connections that could allow sparks or an electrical arc. Keep the device away from a sink or wet area. When finished, be certain the power is off before removing the lid or reaching in. And if you feel a tingle when you touch the unit, stop using it immediately until it's repaired. Yes, of course, on some units it's possible to override the safety devices, in the process exposing yourself